We all have a place of knowing inside of us. And we sometimes, it's almost like we get lost and we can't find it because we're so concerned about how people are going to feel about the way we feel. So you really gotta work through your stuff so that you can meet the person that you're gonna have true, authentic chemistry with, and not this kind of like chaotic chemistry with.
I'm really excited and grateful for today's guest. I think this is going to be a conversation that I know a lot of you have been looking forward to. And I know it's going to be a conversation that's going to help you with wherever you are in life right now. So please, please, please welcome to the show the one and only Lori Gottlieb. Now, Lori Gottlieb is a psychotherapist and New York Times bestselling author of Maybe You Should Talk to Someone, which is being adapted as a television series with Eva Longoria. In addition to her clinical practice, she writes the Atlantic's weekly Dear Therapist advice column and contributes regularly to the New York Times and many other publications. She's a member of the Advisory Council for Bring Change to Mind. Lori is a sought-after expert in media such as The Today Show, Good Morning America, and NPR's Fresh Air. Her new Dear Therapist podcast, produced by Katie Couric and co-hosted with Guy Winch, helps listeners to see themselves more clearly and debuts this spring. Make sure you check it out and subscribe in advance. I'm excited to learn more about therapy, human relationships, and more. Welcome to the show, Lori, and her new book, Maybe You Should Talk to Someone. We will put the link to the book into all the captions and comments, so make sure you go and grab a copy. Lori, thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for having me.
No, this is a real treat. And as we were preparing, I ran into how many mutual friends we have, or mutual people that we've crossed paths with. So I've interviewed Guy.
Wow.
Feels like many lifetimes ago, but when I was at HuffPost with Ariana Huffington. And at the same time, Eva Longoria is a really close friend. So it's just, I feel like, and then you know Jim and Eamon.
Yes.
So when it all comes together, it's always...
It's a small world.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But I want to start somewhere where I'm not sure, maybe you get asked it a lot or not, but I'd love to start with, tell me about your latest adventure with your son.
My latest adventure with my son. Well, there are a lot of adventures because he's 14.
Yeah.
And he's a really interesting person at this age. I think that when kids are younger, you have more of there's more of a hierarchy in the family. And I think all of a sudden they start thinking in all of these complex ways, and they hold up a mirror to you and make you ask questions about yourself and the world in a different way. So I would say our adventures are conversations.
Nice. And does what you know about the human mind and connection and relationships, where does it help and where does it hinder in the parenting process?
That's such a great question. I think what it does is it gives me an awareness of the importance of letting people access their feelings. So many times as parents, we get uncomfortable with a feeling that our kids are having, and we try to talk them out of their feelings. So, a kid says, I'm angry about that. And we say, really? You're so sensitive. Or we say, or they say, I'm sad. And we say, oh, well, here's a balloon, let's go to Disneyland, right? We try to sort of talk them out of it. Or I'm scared. And we say, oh, don't be scared. There's nothing to be scared about. Be brave. And I think what happens is then people don't know how to access their feelings because they were always talked out of them. So I think the benefit, the upside of being the child of a therapist is that nothing gets swept under the rug. The downside is that he'll be totally screwed up anyway because, that's life.
Yeah. And what are the lasting effects of that? What you're saying is spot on. Like, we're always trying to negate or neglect feelings and emotions that people share with us. What are the long-lasting effects of that? Well, in adulthood.
Right. I think what happens is that people try to get rid of their feelings. They don't realize that feelings are positive, that our feelings are a compass, that they give us information. If you're sad, why are you sad? What needs to change? If you're anxious, what is that telling you about what's not working in your life? Even envy. People are so afraid of envy. And I always say to people, follow your envy. It tells you what you want. So instead of sitting there and looking at what everybody else has, say, what do I want? How can this help me to take the small step that I need to take to do something different so I can have what I want. So what happens is people will minimize their feelings. Well, I have a roof over my head and food on the table, so I shouldn't be sad. I shouldn't be anxious. I shouldn't feel the way that I feel. People will try to numb out their feelings. So many people feel like, numbness is a way of, like kind of managing their feelings. But I feel like numbness isn't nothingness. Numbness is, it's not having feelings. It's being overwhelmed by too many feelings. And your feelings don't go away just because you push them down. And that's the problem, because our feelings will come out in behaviors, in a short-temperedness, in anxiety, in too much food or wine or time on the internet. A colleague of mine calls the internet, she said, it's the most effective short-term non-prescription painkiller out there.
True. And like every non-prescription painkiller, also has a lot of side effects.
Well, yeah.
Terrible ones.
The problem is that if you don't know what you feel, you don't know what your story is, right? And I think that our stories are this way of making sense of our lives. And so what happens is I, as a therapist, see people come in and they tell me their story. And the thing is, their story, there's so many problems with the story. We're all unreliable narrators, right? We're telling a story in a particular way. But I think if we don't know what we feel, we only see a very narrow part of the story and it limits us.
Yeah, so true. And I feel half the challenge is also that we've just become so disconnected with knowing how we feel about anything. So, I mean, one of the things that really helps me is I'm always thinking, like, after eating a meal, I know whether I like that cuisine or not. Like, it's very clear to me. After I watch a movie, I know whether I like the movie or not. So I often try and apply that same sense check with myself after I meet a person, after I go to a place, after I interact with an energy. Is that a good habit? Is that a habit that you recommend? What are the easiest ways to getting closer to our feelings and actually understand how we feel about something or someone?
Well, I think the first thing is to notice when you get afraid of a feeling. I think it's almost like our fear of our feelings is scarier than the feelings themselves. So, what happens is somebody might feel something that they feel like somebody else might not like. And so they say, I'm going to adjust my feeling to please others, to make sure that it's how I'm supposed to feel about this. And then they lose their sense of their place of knowing. We all have a place of knowing inside of us. And it's almost like we get lost and we can't find it because we're so concerned about how people are going to feel about the way we feel.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I find like, a big part of that is also a survival mechanism, right? Like it's a feeling of like community or feeling of tribe where we want to feel almost artificial connection because that feels safer than feeling uncertain disconnection.
Right. It's for survival, we have to connect, we have to belong. You can't be alone. You will get eaten by, wherever you are. Yeah. So you have to have the tribe around you. But the problem is that it's not an authentic way of having the tribe around you when you're pretending to be something that you're not. So many people in therapy, for instance, they come in and they have a mask on. And they're so afraid of, they want to entertain me. They want to be liked by me. They're afraid that they're boring. And I always say that if you show me the truth of who you are, I will be fascinated by you. No matter what that truth is. But if you're like, look over here, look over here, look over here, I'm going to be so bored.
Yeah.
I'm sitting there going, what is this person trying to tell me? What is the significance of what they're saying? And what they're really doing is trying to keep me out.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it's almost like being like a magician who's scared away of giving their tricks and you're trying to keep everyone entertained, but then you never see that person beyond that mask.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Tell me about a time when you've given someone some advice where you actually realized that you didn't feel it was the best advice. Like, how does a therapist process that? Because I feel like in any profession, whether I'm a coach, you're a therapist, like when you're giving advice, it's almost like there are times when you're so certain about a belief, you're so certain about value. And then I've looked back at stuff I've said and just been like, I was so wrong. Have you ever felt that? And how do you reconcile that for you and the person you've been working with?
I think it's really important for me to remember that I might know what I would do in a certain situation, but that might not be the best choice for them because I'm not living their life. So I have this word taped up in my office. It's ultra-crepidarianism. And it means the habit of giving advice or opinions outside of one's knowledge or competence.
I love it.
And I think that applies to our friendships and our romantic relationship, everything, because you can't know what another person should do. You can help them come to a place of knowing for themselves what they should do. Yeah. So I'm always working to help people to figure out, to get to that place of what should I do, and not ask the outside world, and not, we crowdsource on the internet. We do that. Like, we ask the internet. People will type in these questions like, husband is cheating. What should I do? And they crowdsource that. And it will be different for each person.
Yeah, I always feel like we have this extreme of like, when we're going through something, we either ask everyone for every opinion.
Yes.
Or we do the opposite, where we ask no one for nothing. Like, you don't even ask the experts or a therapist or someone who can actually help you get closer to the answer.
And the reason we don't ask is because of shame. I think so many times we keep these secrets from ourselves, from other people, because we feel we have so much shame around the fact that we're even struggling with something. So many people keep secrets from me as a therapist. And Carl Jung called secrets psychic poison. And I think that's what they are, is like when we keep something, and there's a difference between, of course, privacy, which we all need to have, and secrecy. Secrecy is about shame. Privacy is like a healthy boundary.
Wow, that's fascinating. Yeah.
Secrecy is, I can't tell this to anybody. I get this so much. I see a difference too between the way men and women keep things to themselves, right? So many men will come in and they'll say, I've never told anyone this before. And then what they tell me feels like, really? That is your big secret? And I feel so much compassion for them, because I feel like it's so sad that in our culture, we tell men, you cannot be vulnerable. You cannot share this. Because you will appear weak, or, whatever it is. It's not okay. Women will also come in and they'll say, I've never told anyone this before. But then they'll say, except for my mother, my sister, and my best friend. So they've told maybe 1 to 3 people, but for them, it feels like it's a secret and they haven't told anyone. So I feel like, what is this shame about? Why is it so hard, when the reality is that we're all going through similar things. And if we don't talk about it, we don't know that.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think that's the saddest thing about all of that, is we feel like everyone's got it figured out apart from us.
Yes.
Right? It's not only that we feel shame, it's like we feel like, she's got it all figured out, he's got it figured out, and that person in my company's got it figured out, whatever it is, but I'm the only one.
Right. And then what happens is we have this voice in our head that is so self-critical, so unkind, because we don't get the feedback of, this is normal and everybody's going through it. And so we walk around. I had this one therapy patient write down everything that she said to herself over the course of a few days and come back and read it to me. And she comes back and she has this sheet of paper and she says, I can't read this. I'm such a bully. And they were things like, are you going to eat that with those thighs? Or you made the mistake. You're so stupid. Or, look at all those couples. I'll never find anyone. Yeah. And we don't realize that's what's playing in our heads, because we don't reality check with other people that they're also struggling with some of the same things.
Yeah.
And the thing is, self-flagellation never enhances our growth. So people think, I'm going to be tough on myself and I'm going to hold myself accountable and then I'm going to grow and change. Self-compassion is how you grow and change. And that doesn't mean not holding yourself responsible for things. What it means is that you can be accountable, and you can also be compassionate. And that combination is going to help you grow and change.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, if anyone, I'm just going to throw it out there, if me or Laurie look like we're sweating, it's because we are sitting in a sauna. Like, we are in a sauna right now.
With no AC.
With no AC, just for the benefit of this audio for each and every single one of you. So in case you see us sweat, it is the depth of the conversation, yes, but it is also the fact that it is a sauna.
And it's only going to get worse. There will be water just very soon.
But Laurie, tell me about what first took you into wanting to be a therapist, because I feel like today therapy is, and I mean, of course, I'm only looking at it in the generation that I'm in, but I'm seeing therapy being a very growing need in the world. I'm seeing it as an industry that I believe we need more qualified people to serve people and to help people and support people. We're seeing the rise of mental health. when you decided to be a therapist, what was your calling to that, and where did you see its role at that time versus how you've seen it evolve?
So it's interesting because I came to the therapy profession very late in life. I never imagined that I would be a therapist. I started off when I graduated from college. I was working doing film development, and then I moved over to NBC, and I was doing primetime series development. And this was a long time ago. This was the year that ER and Friends premiered. So this is
amazing.
1994.
Yeah, great shows.
Great shows.
Yeah.
But when I was working on ER, it was interesting because what I loved about working in TV and film too was telling these rich human stories. And I felt like ER did that so well. I mean, nobody goes into an emergency room because they expected something to happen, right? So it's these inflection points in life. And we had a consultant on the show who was a real ER doctor. And I spent some time in the ER with him. And he kept saying to me, I think you like it better here than you like your day job. And he said, you should go to medical school. And I said, well, I'm not doing that. I was a French major. I'm not doing that. But I went to medical school. And I felt like in medical school, you saw the real stories. So it wasn't the fictionalized versions of them. It was real life. And when I got there, it was like, I was up at Stanford, and it was like the dot-com boom, the first one before the bust. And everybody was saying, oh, there's this new thing called managed care, and you're not going to be able to spend time with your patients in the way that you want to. And I was really about had this idea of being the family doctor who guides people through their lives, which of course leads to the therapy thing, but I didn't realize that at the time. And so I ultimately, I started writing when I was there, and I left to become a journalist where I felt like I could really spend time with people, hear their stories, help them tell their stories. And then later, when I had a baby, I was, it was one of those things where I felt like I needed more human contact during the day, adult contact during the day. And the UPS guy would come with all the deliveries, and literally I would detain him and be like, hey, how about those diapers? And he would back away to his big brown truck. Brilliant. And I thought, something is wrong here. He would, at a certain point, he would like tiptoe to the door, gently put the package down so I could not engage him in conversation.
Talking to strangers.
And right. And so I called up the dean at Stanford and I said, listen, maybe I should come back and do psychiatry. And she said, if you do psychiatry, you'll probably be prescribing Celexa in 15-minute intervals. I know what you wanted to do. Why don't you get a graduate degree in clinical psychology and do the work, the deep work that you want to do? And that's exactly what I did. So I feel like I went from telling people stories to helping people change their stories in the therapy room. I feel like my writing background is so useful because I'm almost like an editor in the therapy room where people come in with these faulty narratives and I help them to rewrite them. One of the things I think people feel when they come to therapy is, I really want to understand who I am. And I feel like part of knowing who you are, part of getting to know yourself is getting to unknow yourself. It's to let go of those limiting stories that you've been telling yourself over and over, so that you can live your life and not that faulty narrative that you've been telling yourself about your life. And that opens you up to so many more possibilities. So sometimes what we think we know about ourselves isn't really accurate. And that's the editing that we do in the therapy room.
Yeah, absolutely. You're so right. We need to unknow and unlearn so much more than we feel we need to learn about ourselves and know about ourselves. It's the uncovering. In my book, I talk about the analogy that's given in the spiritual texts of a dusty mirror. So it's like if you look into a mirror and you look into it and you ask, what am I looking at? It's like all you see is dust. And that's kind of like our experience of who we are. Whereas when you start wiping away the dust, it can actually be a painful process in the beginning because the dust comes in your face and you cough a little bit and it gets in your eyes, but then slowly you can see yourself. So it's that cleansing away of all the layers of dust that we've accumulated almost.
Right. And when you say it's hard, it is hard. And I think sometimes people imagine that they're going to come to therapy and they're going to download the problem of the week and then they're going to leave and they don't have to do any work.
Yeah.
And you actually do have to do some work. And that's why I talk in the book about the difference between idiot compassion and wise compassion.
Yes, I love that. Yeah, tell us about it. Yeah.
So idiot compassion is what our friends do. It's like, someone breaks up with you and you're like, oh, he was a jerk, even though we know that like this has happened the last 3 times because there's certain ways you behave in the relationship that lead to this outcome. Or, you didn't get the promotion you wanted. And we know why that happened because that keeps happening to you. And we say, oh, your boss doesn't see your talent when we really know what's going on. But we don't want to rock the boat and we think we're being supportive. but it's not really supportive. And so, it's kind of like if a fight breaks out in every bar you're going to, it might be you. But we don't say that. That's idiot compassion, right? Yeah. Wise compassion is holding up that mirror, but the clear mirror, not the dusty mirror. Yeah. And it's holding up that mirror and saying, I'm going to help you to look at yourself in a way that maybe you haven't been willing or able to see. And I think you're going to like what you see because it's going to help you navigate through the world in a much smoother way.
Yeah.
And maybe you will have to make some changes, which people, people usually come into therapy and they're like, I want things to change. And what they want to change is someone else or something else. They don't realize that they are going to have to make some changes.
Yeah.
And I want to say, like, you're the protagonist in the story. You're going to have to make some changes.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things I think we struggle with that is, I was talking about this with a friend the other day. We were on a walk and we were saying that she was being really vulnerable and open. She's amazing. I know she listens to the podcast. You know who you are. I won't say names. But it's the feeling of we want people to be honest with us, but we struggle to be honest with people.
Yeah.
So it's a weird circle because it's like me saying, Laurie, I want you to be really honest with me about how this podcast is going. But then when my friend asks me how their podcast is going, I'm not telling them the truth.
Yes.
But I'm expecting you to tell me the truth.
Yes.
And so almost we become demanders of the truth, but not givers of. And then that continues that circle, if that makes sense. And so how do we actually open ourselves up to create space for friendships like that? Because I almost think in the same way as you're saying, we're creating those scenarios in our life again at work or in relationships.
Yeah.
We are inviting idiot compassion into our life.
That's right.
Because we're not ready for it almost, right?
Right. We have to be able to hear it. I see this so much with couples that I see. So a lot of times, somebody will say, and I see this most typically in like a heterosexual couple where the woman says to the man, I want you to be really vulnerable with me. I want to understand your inner life. I want you to open up to me. And then he does, and he starts crying, and she is frozen. She's like, what? Be careful what you wish for, right? Yeah, I didn't mean like that. Yeah. Right. Or if someone's like, or if the thing that they're being truthful about is something going on between the two of you. And people are so afraid to share that. So maybe they'll be open about something out there. But if it's like, there's something I want to talk to you about us. And the person says, yeah, I want you to be really open and honest with me. Until you really say, I notice this happens between us and here's something about you. And the person's like, whoa, I didn't want to hear that, right? So we're so uncomfortable with other people's truth. You don't have to agree with somebody else's feelings, but you have to know that their feelings are valid, which doesn't mean that you have the same feelings. There's a distinction. It's almost like the difference between when somebody really wants someone to forgive them. And I always say, like, there's a woman in the book, she wants her adult children to forgive her for what she had done. They're estranged from her. And I said, you know what? You can't, you're asking for something called forced forgiveness, that people are not going to forgive you because it will make you feel better. And sometimes not forgiving is okay. It's okay if your children never forgive you. Maybe they will have compassion for you. Maybe they will see you as the mother that they want now, even though you couldn't be that then. We have to learn how to forgive ourselves. But so many times if someone says, I'm really upset about this, we say we want to hear that, but we don't know how to let it in, how to be open to it.
Yeah. And how do you in the therapy room and in your life, and when you're advising people live, or sometimes we assume that people live very problem-driven lives. So when they come and see you, they feel they have to start with a problem.
Yeah.
Or sometimes when you see a friend, you feel like you have to share something that's going wrong for there to be a conversation. I feel like almost problems and wrongs have become better conversation starters, or more, I would say, more comfortable conversation starters for people, as opposed to something positive. Do you see that a lot?
You know what's so interesting? Yeah. I think that we have this weird dichotomy where on the internet, everybody's posting all the positive things. In person, everybody's sharing all the negative things.
So true, yeah.
And so there's not that balance. I think that a lot of the time we're kind of using our friendships to kind of download our problems, but we're not actually listening. When I was training, I was doing my internship, a clinical supervisor said, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth. There's a reason for that ratio.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think we don't know how to listen. And so sometimes we feel like when someone's telling us something that we need to problem solve for them. We don't know just how to sit with them and not fix it for them. And we don't realize too that sometimes we're helping them by helping them to hear themselves more clearly.
Yes.
And if we talk for them, if we talk over them, they can't hear themselves. We're talking over their internal voice.
That last bit there at the end that you just mentioned is so powerful. We're talking over their internal voice, and actually simply listening to them allows them to hear themselves.
Yes.
And you're so right. I feel like my best conversations are definitely when I can find the narrative just by being able to share and share and share, because most of the time we share, we talk for 2 minutes and the person giving the answer talks for 8. And it's almost like, and now it's like, okay, now do I take that answer? They don't quite understand me. And then, right, it just kind of gets lost. So how do we shift? Is talking about our problems useful? With who is it useful? And when is it useful?
Yeah, I think you have to choose your audience.
Yeah.
I think so many times people have had bad experiences. Let's say that growing up, they had bad experiences. And so then they end up choosing someone who will disappoint them. And then they say, see what happens when I'm vulnerable? See how that doesn't work? Yeah. And what happens is they don't realize that they're repeating this pattern. One thing that therapy really does for people is it helps them to see you are making choices that are repeating, that are helping you to repeat a pattern that is making you unhappy, that is keeping you stuck. And people don't realize that they're doing that. There's a woman in the book who keeps hooking up with the wrong guys, right? And including, by the way, one from the waiting room. I don't mean in the waiting room. It's not that exciting in her office, but she meets him in the waiting room. And I know because of her pattern that, this is going to be a disaster. And she keeps saying, oh, it's the guys, it's this person, it's that person. And she doesn't realize that these people are so much like the people she grew up around. And I don't mean that we're blaming people's parents, because I think that most parents did their absolute best. Most parents really want to be a good parent, but sometimes they didn't know how, or they were very limited, or there were some mental health issues or whatever it might be. And so they couldn't give their kids that mirroring experience that, is something that they would want in an adult relationship. And so with her, it takes her so long to realize that when she meets someone who is going to give her what she wants, she's like, oh, I'm not attracted, no chemistry, right? It's almost like she doesn't know how to be around someone who will give her what she wants. And there's a learning process around, well, wait a minute, just because something feels familiar, like the person who disappoints you, doesn't mean it's right. That chemistry that she kept feeling was like, oh, you feel familiar, come closer.
Yeah.
It's like, no, the fact that you feel familiar should be a sign, like, let's try something different. Let's go into this place of unfamiliarity. And it will be uncomfortable because you don't know the customs in this country. You haven't been to this country before. You're going to have to use your guidebook and learn your way around a little bit. But why don't you see what it's like over in that country?
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, absolutely. What is your take on the elusive chemistry when people talk about it in their partnerships? And, the way I've always understood it is I've always felt that when you look at chemistry and compatibility, chemistry is something that I can feel multiple times a day with different people.
Yep.
I can feel it with the barista. I can feel it with my personal trainer. I can feel it with someone I'm just taking the train home with. Like, chemistry is something I can feel over and over again. Compatibility is something I can't. It's not as easily replaceable. It took longer to build, and it's something that I have with less people in the world in general.
Yep.
And so for me, I always look at chemistry as that elusive thing, because I hear the same. My friends will come back from dates and be like, Jay, but there was no chemistry. And I'm like, okay, wait, so tell me about that and how you've tackled helping people understand chemistry and filter it better.
Yeah. So this is, I love that we're having this conversation, because this is such an important part of relationship. So many times people will say, they went on a first date with somebody and they're like, yeah, no, I had a really good time, but there was no chemistry. And I said, well, having the really good time might mean that there's potential for chemistry.
Yes.
But what they do is, because they're on the apps and they say, oh, well, there's like 10,000 other people that I can date. And they just keep recycling and recycling and recycling, and they don't give something time or space to grow. And chemistry sometimes happens right away, and other times it takes time to grow. So there are these surveys that were done where men and women were followed for 20 years, from the moment that they went on a first date through marriages, divorces, all these things. And what happened was, a lot of people have revised their stories depending on what happened later. So the people who are happily married, let's say, a lot of them said, well, tell us about the first date. when they're telling it now, they say, oh yeah, there was instant chemistry. But what they reported at the time was, yeah, I don't know, maybe I'll go on a second date. I don't know. There's not a lot here, but it built. And so their story became there was instant chemistry, right? Now, the people who were divorced, sometimes they would say, oh, I knew I never liked this person from the beginning. And yet at the time they reported, oh my God, we had this amazing chemistry, right? So it's not very reliable that first time is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
It takes time. So you go on a first date or a first meeting with somebody and you say, did you have a good time? Would you like to spend another hour with this person? And then see whether something develops. Sometimes it does. A lot of the times it does. A lot of the time it doesn't, but you won't know until you give it some breathing room. I should say too that, there's this saying that we marry our unfinished business. And what I mean by that is that a lot of times if you haven't worked through some of these ways of being in relationship that didn't work very well for you, you seek them out in other people without realizing it. So the person will look very different, let's say from your mom or your dad or whomever. And yet, once you get to know that person, you're like, oh God, oh wait, this feels really like, oh, I recognize that. I didn't see that at all, right? So that's our unfinished business. So you really gotta work through your stuff so that you can meet the person that you're going to have true, authentic chemistry with and not this kind of like chaotic chemistry with.
Yeah, chaotic chemistry is a really nice way to put it because, yeah, that's often what it is. It's like everything's chaotic, but we feel chemistry. It's, it's like...
Well, people will say, I have so much chemistry with this person, even though I can't rely on this person, or I'm always nervous, I'm always on edge, I never know where I stand with this person, but we have so much chemistry. Yeah.
And it's just, and it's crazy how, I'd love to date back actually, and I'm doing some research on it right now. I'd love to hear if you already know it, but I'm really interested in where that desire for chemistry ever even sourced. Like where it started, like that want that we all have for wanting to feel chemistry. Like I wonder whether it was a movie or, because I remember the first time I wanted a girlfriend was because I watched a movie. Yeah. My favorite character like was attracted to this girl and I was like, oh, maybe I should have a girlfriend. Like I didn't, I was a kid and I didn't even know what that meant. Yeah. But it was just so cleverly planted into my mind that I didn't feel complete without a partner. And it's fascinating to me look at where these things started because sometimes they're just things that you've heard over and over again in movies or books or songs.
I think that we define chemistry as sort of like this instant magical thing. And chemistry is so multifactorial. It's about, what is this energy that goes on between the two of you and how are you together in daily life, not like on the vacation in Tahiti, right? So when people think about spending their lives with somebody, it's about the day-to-day. It's about how do we get through the hard things? How do we listen to each other? How do we deal with the places that we disagree? How do we deal with the differences between us? Because we think of chemistry as like that overlap. Like we both love sushi and rollerblading and this movie and that book and, and we're vegan and, whatever it is, right? Yeah. And that's not chemistry. Yeah. Chemistry is how do we inhabit the same space knowing that we're two separate human beings? And how do we stay connected even with the space between us?
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. That's really powerful. Tell me about dealing with the paradox of being perceived as someone who has all the answers, but also is knowingly trying to grow in their own life. Like, how does that paradox work for you?
Yeah.
When it's like, the perception not only of your clients now, like, you're going to have a TV show about the book, like the book's been so incredibly successful, which is helping so many people. How do you deal with that personally of that feeling of, yeah, I do have answers and I do know how to help people. Obviously, people are being helped. Like you are changing people's lives. And at the same time, you're like, yeah, but I'm still learning and I've still got to work on this and I'm still working on this. How do you deal with that paradox? Or how do you?
Yeah, well, that's interesting because so in the book, I follow 4 very different patients where I'm their therapist. And then the 5th patient in the book is me as I go through my own therapy with my therapist. And a lot of people say, well, why, are you insane? Why would you do that before the book came out?
I think it's really smart.
And it was, well, the reason I did it is because I really felt like if my patients were going to be so vulnerable, I felt it would be disingenuous to be the expert up on high, helping these people when I was going through something in my own life. And we all struggle. And so I say at the very beginning of the book that my greatest credential is that I'm a card-carrying member of the human race. And it was so important for me to show how we're all more the same than we are different. And I think that that makes what people can learn from the book so much more powerful and impactful. What's interesting, though, is that even though I was very sure that I wanted to do that, once the book, I was supposed to be writing a different book. I was supposed to be writing a book about happiness. and it just felt so empty to me, because I feel like happiness is a byproduct of living our lives in a fulfilling way, in a meaningful way, is really what we all hope for. But happiness as the goal in and of itself felt like a recipe for disaster. So I felt like it was just, I was a therapist and I was trying to write this book about happiness, and it was making me depressed. Ironically, I called it the miserable depression-inducing happiness book. And so I ended up not writing that book. And then I ended up writing this book. And I thought like maybe 3 people would read it, because everybody said, oh, nobody wants to read a book about therapy. And it's a book about the human condition. And so once the book was turned in and the sales team got it at the publisher, and everybody started like passing the book around. And I thought, oh no, maybe because I thought like 3 people would read it. Now I'm like, maybe 300 will read it, maybe 3,000. I didn't realize like we're like 10 months on the New York Times list now.
Yeah,
and so, well, thank you. I say that only in the context of, if I had known how many people were going to be reading it, I think I would have hesitated to be so open. I let it rip. I mean, I do not come off well.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm very just, here's what happened, and I just let it go. And so I'm really glad that I didn't clean myself up, because I think that if I had, people wouldn't have read it. I think that the reason that people are responding to it and seeing themselves in these stories is because we're all so real in the book. Nobody's cleaned up in the book.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's beautiful. And I do think that message is so much stronger today as well. And I'm really glad that you didn't know how successful the book was going to be.
Yeah.
It's great. And it's funny though, isn't it, that we feel that sometimes, like, you would, and I'm glad you didn't, and I know you didn't too, because you're very happy sharing, but it is weird that we think, oh, if that many more people were going to see this, I wouldn't. What is it about that? Is that just more chances and odds of people having issues with us or challenging us? Like, what is that stops us from being more vulnerable the more people see us? Because I feel when you're not well known, it's like you strive to be well known, and then when you meet people who are well known, they're almost striving for more privacy.
Yeah.
Because, it's like, right? I'm sure you see that in your work all the time.
I do. I think that people are afraid. I mean, I think there's shame there, like that as a therapist, letting people see me struggle.
Yeah.
And say, here, I mean, I do all the things with my therapist that my patients do with me. So you see me, like, I want to be liked by him, and I Google stalk him one night, and, I do all these things. And it's embarrassing, because you think, well, people will think less of me. People will think that I'm less competent, or, whatever you imagine. And that's not been the case at all.
Yeah.
I think that people have said, I really value what you shared. I really respect you. I admire you for that. And I think that translates to people out in the world being more open with each other, because the title of the book, Maybe You Should Talk to Someone, doesn't mean we should all go to therapy necessarily. It means we all need to talk more to each other. Mm-hmm. And so the more that I can model that for people, if I can't, walk the talk, if I can't do what I'm asking people to do, then there's a big gap.
Yes.
But if I actually do it, I think it helps people to say, oh, well, if she can do it, then I can do it too.
Absolutely. And what have you seen of those patterns of clients that you find that you're working with that have seen the biggest transformations in their life? Are there patterns in those people that they have certain shared beliefs, values, work ethic, habits that help them take whatever advice you gave or other therapists have given them that have actually changed? Like, what has been that kind of X factor that people have shared?
I think that what happens is they release the story that they came in with. And sometimes it's these stories of, there's the content of what they're saying. Like, here's what's going on in my relationship. Here's what's going on with my anxiety. Mm-hmm. And they have a story about it. So they think that the content is the story. But what I'm listening for is sort of the music under the lyrics. So the lyrics are, I'm having panic attacks. Yeah. The music is, what is the underlying struggle or pattern that is getting you into this situation. And once they can see that can translate into everything that happens in their daily lives. But I think it takes courage I think it takes so much courage for them to say, I'm going to make changes. I always like to say that insight is the booby prize of therapy, that you can have all the insight in the world. You can say, now I understand why I'm struggling in this way. Now I understand why I have these arguments with my partner. And I'll say, well, did you do something different?
Yeah.
And they'll say, well, no, but now I understand it.
Yeah.
I say, well, you're not really doing the work because you have to do something different. And I love this Viktor Frankl quote that's in the book where he had written, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is the power to choose our response. In our response, it lies our growth and our freedom. So yes, there might be difficult people, but then the question is, what is our role in that? So why are we in that relationship? Or what is our role in making that relationship so chaotic, so difficult, so there's so much tension in it? Why is that? So what is it that we can do next time that person does that thing that triggers us? Can we have a different response? Because the response we keep giving is yielding the same thing. Nothing's changing. So when we talk about insight as the booby prize of therapy, it's not just having the insight, it's you have to make changes. And you have to look, that means that you can make changes. You're not going to change the other person, but your changes can influence another person. Yeah. So it's always like doing a dance, right? Yeah. And so if you change your dance steps, that person either has to change their dance steps too, or they will fall flat on the floor, or they can leave the dance floor.
Yeah.
But the good thing is you changed your dance steps. And that's the thing when you say, what is the unifying thing that all of them have in common when they've made changes that have really, really transformed their lives? It's about they chose different dance steps.
Yeah, that's great advice. And I love that analogy of the dance steps. I can visualize it perfectly. And it makes so much sense. And I think one of the things that I hear in that regard that a lot of people I talk to, and I'm getting to get you to give them advice, which is fantastic. And they all listen to the podcast also, is the feeling of like, I know what I need to do to change, but I'm only going to do it for a few days. And if that person doesn't change their dance steps back in line with me right now, I cave or I let go. And sometimes it's genuine and sometimes it's not genuine. Sometimes it's like, well, if they don't change, I'm not going to change. But for a lot of friends, it's like, I'm going to change and I'm going to be the best husband in the world for 3 months. But but she never changes.
Okay, so here's the thing. You're not changing for them, you're changing for you.
100%.
And so if you stop changing in positive ways for yourself, you're letting yourself down. So you're not doing it to get a response from the other person. If you get a different response from the other person, that's great.
Amazing, yeah.
But you're doing it to get a different response from yourself. You're doing it so that you are making choices that align with how you want to be in the world. And when you make choices that align with how you want to be in the world, you will be putting a different energy out there that maybe that will influence somebody potentially, but it will certainly influence you and the choices that you make. So you don't make a change, and it's not a contest. It's not a contest of like, if I change, you need to change, or you need to change first. I see this with couples a lot. Like I'll only change when you change. And it's a fight. It's a historical fight that they have with from their childhood. Like, I'll only change, mom and dad, when you become the parent that I needed you to be back then. Yeah. But you're an adult now. It's like wearing clothes that no longer fit you.
Totally.
And you're still like trying to get those clothes. It's like, take off those clothes. You're free. There's this analogy in the book that I love that my therapist used with me. He said, you remind me of a cartoon, and it's of a prisoner shaking the bars, desperately trying to get out. But on the right and the left, the bars are open. No bars.
Yeah.
Right? And I was like, whoa, I am my own jailer.
Yeah.
We sometimes are our own jailers. We think we're so trapped by everyone and everything else, but we are the ones who are keeping ourselves imprisoned. I just did a TED Talk about this. And it was about the idea that we know on some level that the bars are open, but we don't want to step outside, because if we step outside, we will have to change. And when we change, that means we have to take responsibility for our lives. And sometimes we would rather blame everything that's going wrong on somebody else.
Yeah.
If I take responsibility for my life, then I'm also responsible for what doesn't work. I can't blame my bad mood, my bad day, my bad circumstance, my not taking risks on this other person. I have to be accountable to myself for that.
And how about when people take that accountability, but instead of turning it into action, they turn it into anger? on themselves.
Right.
And I feel that's half of what scares people. Like it's easier to blame everyone else and everything else going wrong because then I at least don't hate myself.
Yeah.
But it's like when you take it inward, and sometimes that can launch you into action. Like I was literally sharing that with a friend yesterday. I was saying that there was a time in my life where I could have sat around and blamed the people around me, where I knew that I had to be accountable and take action in my life and own it. And I was like, this is my life. If I'm going to blame them, I'm going to be sad.
Yeah.
So it shifted me into action. But we find also that it can shift people into anger. How do you stop someone from getting into that space where now they see it all as their fault? And now it's like they're just a bad person and it starts becoming very negative for their self-talk.
Well, I would say two things. One is that we really talk a lot about self-compassion because self-compassion helps you see how complicated human beings are. It helps you see that I'm these things and I'm also these things, and both can coexist. I'm growing here and I'm learning here and I made this regrettable choice here, but I'm going to learn from it. And self-compassion breeds compassion for others. So then we're more compassionate out in the world because we see the complexities of other people too. So I think that when we can, instead of turning that, the responsibility into anger, you can say, I'm going to be really kind to myself because no growth can happen without compassion and no growth can happen without vulnerability. And you can't truly be vulnerable if you're not going to be compassionate because you'll have too much of that anger coloring it. So I think that that's part of it. And I think the other thing too is to remember that punishing yourself with anger is going to distract you from something that we all have to face. And this is going to sound like a non sequitur, but it's not, which is that we're all going to die. Okay. Life has 100% mortality rate, and that's not just for other people. And so I think that sometimes we spend so much time in the anger because we don't want to think about, I really do have a limited time here. And we get so scared. We say, oh my God, what am I going to do? I have to make my life worthwhile and I have to do all these things that I want to do. And we get so scared of not being able to accomplish those things that we'd rather sit in the anger so we don't have to think about it.
Absolutely.
So I really want people to be aware of, there's this saying that I love, which is time is the coin of life. Spend it well. You're not spending it well when you're angry either at yourself or at other people. Anger is, there's a thing called the anger iceberg, right? And so it's like this, if you can imagine this image of like the iceberg and here's sort of the waterline, right? And so anger is on top, but underneath are our more vulnerable feelings. Right. Sadness, anxiety, regret, whatever it might be.
Anger is just a disguise. It's just the front-facing experience of that emotion.
Yeah. We're so afraid of all of our emotions, even the good ones. We're afraid of joy. There's a word, cherophobia, which is, it's an actual thing. It's fear of joy. And there are people who maybe when they were growing up, whenever they felt like good for a moment, the other shoe would drop. Something bad would happen. And so they got very uncomfortable because joy for them was almost like anticipatory pain. Like it won't last. Yeah. So I'd rather never experience joy than to know that it's going to go away. That was their mindset. Yeah. It's too painful when I get my hopes up and I think everything's going to be okay. And then boom, it goes away, right? And so there are a lot of people who they put all these obstacles in the way of their joy so that they don't have to feel joy because joy is too painful for them.
Yes, absolutely. It's so true. And it's like while you're in joy, you're only thinking about when is this going to end? And when you're in pain, you think about when is this going to end? And that mindset continues. And that same mindset applies to both, right? In joy, you're thinking, when is this going to end? And then in pain, when is this going to end?
Right. And people are afraid of their pain too. And I think there's a difference between pain and suffering. So pain is, we all feel pain because if you're human, you're going to experience pain. But suffering is the ways that we exacerbate the pain, right? So suffering is, I'm going to Google stalk my boyfriend or I'm going to ruminate on this mistake that I made and make myself feel really bad about this thing that happened. That's suffering. So we don't cause our own pain, but we do cause our own suffering.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating how we create suffering, right? We create the suffering. What's that statement about how pain is guaranteed, but suffering is optional?
Right.
And it's something like that. It's like, that's the choice that we get to make. And one of the things I really want to dive into that with you is loss, which we were just mentioning about in the break quickly there. and grief that people experience. And I know for long parts of my life, I personally really struggled with knowing how to deal with people who'd lost someone. For a great amount. I think I'm a lot better now, but it was something I genuinely had to work on. And it's funny because I feel like you're just expected to know how to deal with this stuff. Right? Like there's no, like you're expected to know how to deal with grief. You're expected to know how to deal with breakups, and not just for yourself, but for other people in your life.
Yes.
And in this chapter, you have a chapter where you're talking about John, the character.
Yeah.
Tell us about that experience of dealing with grief and how to support someone you love through grief.
Yeah. So, I think there's a lot of loss in our lives in general, but we minimize the loss. So there are kind of these silent losses. Just before I get into John, there's this idea about, it was a breakup, but not a divorce. So in 3 weeks, you'll be over it, and it's kind of like, so we don't know how to support our friends if they're really experiencing the grief of the end of a relationship where it wasn't as tangible because, it's not a divorce, for example. Or, we see that with, somebody had a miscarriage, but they didn't lose their 8-year-old child. And then people don't talk about the miscarriage and they're so alone in the experience. These are these silent losses because people feel like, well, I can't really, it's even just being single. Okay. So a lot of times people will talk about ambiguous grief. Ambiguous grief is the grief of being single because you don't know when and if you're going to meet someone. So you're always dealing with the loss of not having a partner, and it never ends. In the sense of you can't say, okay, that person's dead now. Not that ends. Let me be clear. What I mean by that is when somebody dies, you are going through that experience of what they meant to you in their life, and they live on with you in a certain way, and you loved that person. Here you haven't met that person yet. You don't even know who the person is. So you're grieving for the person you have not yet met. And people don't understand the grief of somebody who really wants to be with somebody. And people will make all kinds of comments. Oh, well, you'll meet someone, or, like, oh, you have such a great life. And they don't want to acknowledge that. Yes, that might be true. Yes, and this other thing exists, this ambiguous grief of, will I ever meet this person? Where is that person? I'm longing for this person that I don't even know what that person looks like or what their name is. Yeah. Right? So I think that we need to learn how to deal with loss and how to support people in loss. In the book, we have loss in the sense of, even just losing the hope for a better childhood, right? So Charlotte, the woman who keeps hooking up with the wrong guys, what helps her move forward is that in order to move into adulthood, she has to let go of the hope for having had a better childhood. Yeah. If you let go of that, you can move into adulthood and hold that grief. And that's when things open up for you. So there's all kinds of grief that every single person experiences. In the book, we have, loss of a child. We have loss of this young woman goes on her honeymoon and she's in her 30s and she comes back and she has cancer and eventually it turns out to be terminal cancer. And how do you deal with, you have 1 year, they say you have like a year to 10 years to live, right? And so people would say all these things like, have you gotten a second opinion? Like they don't know how to sit with her in the reality of her diagnosis. They'll say things like, well, my cousin took vitamin this and it worked, as opposed to just, this sucks, or I love you so much. So there's a chapter in the book called What Not to Say to a Dying Person, because she wanted to write a book about all the things that well-meaning people who loved her said, but they're so uncomfortable with talking about the truth of the loss. Yeah. Right? So if somebody is experiencing a loss, I hope that we can talk about the truth of the loss with them and not try to distract them from that. Yeah. Because that's what's really going to help them. Yeah. I love that. That's the best advice I've ever heard on loss, for sure. Because everything's a distraction. We're always trying to distract people from their pain. And it's our discomfort. Yeah, it's our discomfort reflecting onto them. Right. Yeah. We say, oh, I don't want to make them uncomfortable. You're actually making them uncomfortable by not speaking about what's there in plain sight. True. Yeah. So this thing is there in plain sight sitting between you, and you're not talking about that, and you're making them uncomfortable. And they feel like then, oh, I feel so unseen right now because you are trying to make yourself more comfortable in talking to me, and I'm not in this equation at all, and yet you're trying to comfort me. Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I can definitely think of
there are literally people's faces flashing in front of me right now that when you're saying that, I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what they wanted to talk about. That's exactly what they wanted to do. But either I was too scared to go there, or if it was me, people were too scared to go there, or whichever way it was. And yeah,
I was just going to say, it's a little bit like apologies, you know, like who is the apology for, right? Are you apologizing because you really feel you regret that happened and you feel sorry, or are you apologizing because it will make the other person feel better? And I think that the more that we can have an authentic dialogue and go to the hard places, both people end up feeling seen and heard.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's the hope that I'm hoping everyone who listens and watches this conversation is just, and reads the book 100%. Like I really hope everyone who's listening and watching today reads the book, because I feel like it's exactly that. It's these subtle insights, it's life's all lived in these moments, these transition moments, these pain moments, these tragedy, like these moments, and they define our relationships. They define how much we trust others. They define who we feel loved by and who we feel close to and who we feel far from. Like, for example, when you just want to go to the park on a sunny day and someone doesn't want to go, you don't feel offended by that. Like, it doesn't affect your relationship. But it's like when you're going through something really painful and someone doesn't know how to process that feels like it can make or break a relationship often. And I see that with people deciding who they love by how they feel that person treats them when they're going through something difficult.
That's right. And that's why going back to what I said earlier about choose your audience, that, you know, you want to make sure that the person that you're opening up to is the right person.
Yeah, absolutely. 2 more questions before I ask you the final set of rounds. So 2 questions that I want to end on before we go into the rapid fire rounds are, how do we be a good friend to others? I know it's a very open question, but I want to leave it open so that you can answer it. What is the best way to be a good friend for someone else? And the second question, how do we allow our friends to be the best for us? Because I think that's the part that we don't hear often enough, is how can we help other people help us better?
Yes. We can be a good friend to others by learning to speak their language. So I do that as a therapist all the time. Just because this person comes in with something that's similar to what the other person came in with, they're unique individuals. And you have to learn to speak someone's language. So often we try to take our language and push it onto them. And it doesn't work.
Totally.
Right? So being a good friend means I care enough about you to learn your language. And how can we help someone be a good friend to us is to be open to the differences between us. We need to let those differences be a part of our friendship to enhance our friendship. I think so many people are so worried about, bringing those differences into the friendship. They think, well, there's going to be a rift here. I believe this and you believe this, and we have different ideas about this. That's okay.
Absolutely. That's amazing. Beautiful answers. Thank you so much for sharing those. So we have our fill in the blanks.
Oh my goodness.
And rapid fire rounds. Fill in the blanks is a new segment that we've started this year since the 1-year anniversary of the podcast. So I share sentences and you fill in the blanks. So therapy doesn't mean.
Oh no. Okay, wait a second.
I know. You can think about it.
Okay. An instant fix.
Okay, good. Okay. Humans are innately
ridiculous.
Okay. Shame and guilt are
toxic.
Changing your narrative allows
possibility.
Suppressing your feelings only
makes you sick.
We suffer unnecessarily when
we get scared.
Being vulnerable and transparent can
transform us.
The only way to achieve true connection is
by being courageous.
Okay. Wonderful. Beautiful. That was great.
Okay.
You were fantastic. Okay, that was very good. We often get people who want to go off on a tangent. You did not do that. I appreciate it. Sticking within the rules.
Which is why I had to
it's very good.
about it.
Okay, so these are rapid fire now. Final 5, which is 1 word to 1 sentence maximum.
Okay.
There are very few people that stick to it, but I have deep respect for anyone who does.
If I wasn't sweating before, I'm sweating now.
I know. Okay, fine. All right, here we go. Let's go. We've got a selection here that I can't wait to choose. So, what question do you wish people would ask you more often?
How do you feel?
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. How do you feel?
Right
I'm going
now,
to start the trend.
Right now, I feel very joyful.
You're very kind. I appreciate that. That's cool. That's interesting. I'm going to go off on a tangent. Okay.
Because I have so much to say about that, actually.
Yeah, let's go. Okay,
Yeah.
so let's do it. Yeah. I felt we needed to too. I feel like people don't ask that, or when they do ask that, they're expecting you to say, okay, good, bad.
Right.
Like, you know, it's like we give such bad answers to that question. Like when someone gives me an interesting answer to that question, I'm almost more alert.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah. So it's I don't mean, how do you feel, like, oh, hey, how you doing? I mean, I actually want people to be curious. And so I think people are so curious about, like, what's going on? How's that project going? What's going on with it? You know, it's sort of like all this like content level things, right? I want to get in the process with people in the right context.
Yeah, of course.
So, you know, I think that sometimes we forget to ask the people that we care about how they feel.
I love that. I think that's really cool. Yeah, I misunderstood it when you said it the first time, so I'm glad.
Instead of like, you know, how are you feeling?
Yeah. And it's hard to ask that and answer that.
Yeah.
Because when you ask that, you've got to be really ready to listen and receive.
Yes.
And the person who's going to answer is going to have to try to not give you the 2-minute answer. So.
Well, also a lot of times when people ask that, it's they have an acceptable range of answers. You know, you can feel the ways that are acceptable to me. Which is very different from, you know, they might throw you a curveball, and those curveballs are where your relationship deepens.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Question number 3. When was the last time you felt heard and understood and not in a therapy session?
Right here.
Oh, thank you. It's very kind. All right. Question number 4. I want to, you're too good at this. So I need to try and find something that, I want you to be good at it, but okay, this one I really like. If you could create a law that everyone had to follow in the world, what would it be?
Kindness.
And what would that practice be? Like if you had to simplify kindness into that one habit or one practice or one thing that everyone had to do every day as the law, what would it be?
Before you speak, ask yourself, how will this land on the other person?
It's a great rule. Yeah, you would change everything.
Yeah.
You probably wouldn't say much.
I think you would.
You think you would?
I think you would. Okay. I think that we know how to be kind. I think that, you know, all of these obstacles get in the way. But I think that when we take away, you know, all of the noise in our heads, and there's so much noise, we innately know how to be kind. You know, is it kind? Is it true? And is it helpful? If it meets those 3 criteria, then go ahead and say it. Nice. And once you practice that, you don't need to premeditate so much. You will organically start to just speak that way to other people.
Yeah, absolutely. In the Bhagavad Gita, the book from India, it's called The 4 Austerities of Speech. So it's, is it true? Is it beneficial to all? This is my favorite one. Can it be said in a way that doesn't agitate the mind of others?
Oh,
right. Like, you know, it's like that delivery point of like, how can you say it in a way that isn't going to agitate someone's mind? And then the 4th one is it based on spiritual text and foundational text? Okay. 5th and final question for you. What is the biggest lesson you've learned in the last 12 months?
That people really want to be open. And I think that I knew that as a therapist, but I didn't realize, you know, I thought, well, maybe in these little clusters of people who go to therapy, those are the people who want to be open. Everybody wants to tell their story, and everybody has a story. People think, oh, well, my story isn't that interesting, or my story is kind of boring. No, people's stories are fascinating. And I've gone all over the country in the since last April when the book came out, and people are telling their stories, and every single one is fascinating. And they are realizing that their story has value. Yeah.
And often those silent or unheard stories are the stories that are more interesting.
Yes.
We were just talking about that now. Like I know people that are just in my vicinity that have fascinating lives and stories that may never become a movie or may never become a book, but they're just fascinating stories of resilience and human connection and breakthrough power and all the rest of it. And so...
And I think we learn so much from other people's stories. And that's why in the book, so many people have said, oh, I learned a lot about myself, even though they're not in the book, because it's so different. If I say to you, Jay, if I say, you know, you're like this or you do this, you'd say, well, no, I'm not. I don't do that. Right? That's our response. But if you see someone else do it, you can say, oh, I'm kind of like that. Totally. Or I do that sometimes.
Totally.
It's very non-threatening to see yourself in other people's stories, which is why I think we all need to be sharing our stories more.
Absolutely. I agree. And thank thank you for encouraging people to do that. Laurie, you're amazing. Everyone, this is Laurie Gottlieb. Maybe you should talk to someone. Go and grab a copy of the book. I promise you it's a fun read, it's entertaining, and as you've seen, it's deeply insightful and empowering as well. Please, please, please go and grab a copy. Like I said, we will put the link to the Amazon order in the captions and the comments. Laurie, this has been amazing. Like speaking to you has been phenomenal. To sit with you in a sauna/not sauna and to have this conversation where we're both sweating. But I just genuinely want to say, like, I love what you're doing. I love the way you're presenting it. I think it's exactly the language and the storytelling that the world needs today. And I'm so happy that it's had so much incredible success. And I'm so grateful to meet you today. Thank you so much.
I'm so grateful for our conversation.
Yeah, thank you. I'm really excited for you all to read this. Everyone go and follow Laurie across social media. Where are the best places for people to find you?
They can find me on Twitter at Laurie Gottlieb1. They can find me on Instagram at Laurie Gottlieb_author. They can find me on my website, lauriegottlieb.com. They can read my Dear Therapist column. It comes out every Monday in The Atlantic. They can read the book.
Yeah, perfect. Go and follow her on all of the social media platforms, and I'll be tagging her in all of these posts. If there's anything that Laurie said that really stood out to you, that really resonated, that really connected, please, please, please tag me and Laurie on Instagram and share it so that I love seeing what connects with you. Like, it means a lot to me because it helps me ask better questions for you. It helps me understand our guests better for you as well. So please do that. Thank you for watching or listening. See you soon. If you want even more videos just like this one, click on the boxes over here. And if you want to continue seeing these kinds of stories, you can subscribe by clicking the link right here.
Starting before you're ready doesn't mean that you're going to throw your life into chaos. But I think for anyone listening who feels stuck, and we all have felt that, right? Where you're just like, oh, like I really want to do it. Start before you're ready will kickstart you into action.
Yeah.
And action really is the antidote to fear.
And today's guest is going to help you do just that. Now, I've been following her work for a long, long time. So for me, this is a huge privilege. I'm so happy to be sitting in front of her, and you're about to see who that is. And I just feel so happy because I've seen her interview some incredible minds. I've seen her just build this beautiful show. And to be able to interview her today about how that all came about and all the other stories around it is a huge honor for me. She's a New York Times bestselling author. She's the founder of the B School and the host of Marie TV. And today's guest is none other than Marie Forleo. Marie, thank you for being here.
Oh, I'm so excited, Jay. I feel like this has been like in the cosmic making for a very long time.
It definitely has. And the reason why I wanted to reach out to Marie to do this is her new book is out on September 10th. It's called Everything is Figure-Outable, right? I love that title. I was just telling her outside a moment ago. I was like, I absolutely love that title. It's out on September 10th. Hopefully, if you're listening or watching this, it's around that sort of time.
Yes.
That's the hope right now. So you can go and get the book right now if you're listening. And Marie, the first thing I want to ask you about, because I love the title so much, is what is the hardest thing you've ever had to figure out? And what gave you this confidence in this bold, beautiful title to literally say, everything is figure-outable?
Yes. So I think the way to answer that question is there's been hard things at different stages of my life, which I feel like is true for most of us. You know, there was actually a time when I was a young child. I was about 13 years old and I didn't live with my parents. So I was estranged from them. I was kind of kicked out of my house. And there were a few years that things were really difficult. I was in an abusive relationship, like just everything felt like it was crashing in around me. And so I think at that stage in my life, that was probably one of the hardest things to overcome. And then, you know, fast forwarding a little bit, I think most of us, sometimes we find ourselves in college or university trying to figure out who we're supposed to be in this world, right? How can we make a living and make a difference? How are we supposed to fit into society? I struggled with that for years and I failed so much before I finally found my calling, which is an extension of what I do now. And then I think even moving on further, you know, there's been times with my relationship with Josh, we've been together 16 years and, you know, no relationship is easy and it's not all unicorns and rainbows and, you know, smiley faces. And there's been times where we were on the brink of losing each other. And that was devastating to me because he's the love of my life. And this idea has helped me help us get ourselves back on track. And so, I've had other challenges with my family. I've had challenges with the business. I've, self-confidence challenges. So I know that's kind of a broad potpourri of things to go through, but those are some of the kind of things at different stages of my life that this one idea, this simple little phrase has always helped me when I feel like nothing is working.
Yeah.
And I feel a bit helpless. It picks me back up and I'm like, nah, I'm going to do this. I'm going to figure this out no matter how long it takes or no matter how many different areas I need to explore, learn about, test, try until I can overcome.
Absolutely. And that's what I love about it so much, is because we're going to need that thought in our lives again and again and again and again. It's never going to be a time when you won't need that.
Yes.
And that statement, it is a simple idea, but it's not, it's deep. It's like, there's so much to unpack. And that's what you do so beautifully in the book. When I was reading it, I was just like, it's a simple idea, but giving someone the confidence that it works is effort. And that's why you've written this book, because it's not easy enough for us to just keep saying, oh, everything's figure outable. And we can say that to ourselves as much as we want, but it needs to be unpacked. And that's what you do in the book. So one of the things for me, when I'm reading it, is when I'm thinking about my life and thinking about those times when I've needed this.
Yes.
And I know for me, it's always been like, don't judge the moment. Like I've always said that to myself. I've been like, don't judge this moment. Like don't label this moment. Don't give it a bad name. And one of the things you talk about in this book is that beliefs are sticky.
Yes.
Right? You talk about these beliefs being sticky. Talk me through some of the toughest beliefs that you think you developed at those times and how you stop them from being so sticky, and why beliefs are so sticky too.
I think, beliefs really are like the train tracks that underpin our lives, that really decide where we're going to go and how we're going to get there. But so many times we don't understand that that's really what's running the show, right? Some of our kind of deepest, most kind of subconscious beliefs about who we are as human beings, what we're capable of, what we're not capable of, how we feel about society, men, women, marriage, money, business, all of these things. We don't often recognize that it's these deep-rooted beliefs, oftentimes that we didn't choose for ourselves. I think one of the most interesting aspects of beliefs is you think about us as babies. We kind of pop out and we're pretty fresh and we're happy. And as we grow up, we're like little sponges, absorbing the beliefs of our family, our caretakers, the media, society. Women are allowed to do X, or if I look like this, I can only reach that, or, money is bad and evil, or success means X, Y, or Z. And so I think beliefs are sometimes so hidden to us that we don't recognize that they could be the thing that are holding us back. And, working and coaching people over the last 2 decades now. I can't even believe I've been doing this for 2 decades, which is amazing. Here's what's something that's interesting. Many times in personal development, people feel like you have to kind of unearth all of your negative and limiting beliefs, and we all have them. But here's what's awesome about the notion that everything is figure outable. I like to describe it almost as the master key. Right? It's like you don't have to go searching around the corners of your consciousness to find all those negative beliefs and fix yourself and change them. If you absolutely adopt this notion that everything is figure outable, and I would encourage people to try it before you deny it. We'll kind of walk down how we can do that. But it's as though it's the first domino that you push and everything else becomes possible. So, for example, for me, early on in my career, I had some really negative limiting beliefs around money. And a lot of my beliefs around money were formed as a child. My parents were going through a divorce. I was about 7 or 8 years old. And I remember just standing in my kitchen, and my mom and dad had just signed the divorce papers. And so the scene was this. My mom was bawling her eyes out, crying. Her face was red. Her eyes were bloodshot. She was talking to her mom, who was in Florida at that time. And she was saying, I can't believe I've been this dumb. I have nothing. I have nothing. And so the thing about my parents, all their fights, it wasn't about infidelity. It wasn't about necessarily like substance abuse or anything like that. It was always about money. My mom feeling like there wasn't enough. She had no control over it. She, didn't have the kind of power to direct where it was going. And so when they got divorced, I was clear as around money. So my mom hung up that phone with her mom. She actually turned to me and she bent down. So she was my height. She took me by the shoulders and she shook me. And she said, Marie, don't ever be stupid like I was. Don't ever give anyone control over your money. Don't ever give everything away to a man. I need you to grow up and be independent and take care of yourself. Look at me. I have nothing right now. Don't be stupid like I was. And I got to tell you, Jay, like as an 8-year-old, right? You get imprinted. And I just stood there and I was like, so I formed these beliefs as a young child that, giving anyone control over your money was like a really bad idea. I also formed the belief that giving a man control over your money, not a good thing to do. And those beliefs, I had to wrestle with them early on in my adult life. I remember being deep in debt. I just had all of these kind of twisted, conflicted notions around myself and money and worth. And so the process of using this idea, everything is figure outable, I used it then to go, you know what? I can figure money out. I can use this as a tool to heal myself and to heal other people and to help others not have suffering in their lives. So, everything is figure outable really can be that master key that helps people wipe through anything that holds them back.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that as well so openly. I think so many of us, when I was listening to you, and I'm hoping everyone who's listening or watching right now was doing the same. When you're hearing Marie describe what she was going through as a child, put yourself back in that position too. Like go through that visualization with her. Because for me, I was sitting back and thinking, oh yeah, what was I going through at 8 years old that has created a belief in my mind? And it's so funny you brought up the money one because I can definitely identify with that. And I grew up in a home where we always said, we just have enough. Like we always have just enough. So my whole adult life, I grew up believing that I only needed to have just enough, which always meant that we were always like just above having nothing.
Yes.
So we never had a lot and we never had nothing, but we had just above nothing. And that became my talking point. So when everyone would say to me like, how much money do you want to make? I'd be like, yeah, just enough. Like that would literally be like how I'd speak about it. And then when I grew up and started to reflect on wanting to have a family and wanting to serve the world and even wanting to create content that I really believed in and wanting to serve the world in ways that I really valued. And I started to think, I was like, wow, if I have just enough, then I can only help the world just enough.
That's right.
Right?
That's right. And so getting back to your point about our beliefs, it's sometimes we don't even understand or realize how much they're driving us until you kind of pause and recognize that they are running the show, right? So we have a simple formula in the book. Our beliefs create our thoughts, and our thoughts create our feelings, and our feelings create our behavior, and our behavior creates our results. And so if you want anything to change on the results level, don't just go to the behaviors or the feelings or even the thoughts. We need to go deeper to our beliefs, because if we can handle that, everything changes.
Absolutely. And so well put. I couldn't agree with you more, because we're always messing around that stuff at the end.
Yeah.
Like I want to change my results, or I want to change how I feel.
Yes.
But then we never talk about
the beliefs.
that
Absolutely. Underpin them all.
Absolutely. And now, so this is also a belief, like everything is figure outable.
Yes.
Is, like you're saying, the master key belief in one sense of like believing that everything's figure outable. You alluded to it earlier. When someone hears that and go, Marie, it's easy for some to say, come on. It's easy for you to say now that things have worked out, or wait a minute. I was at a conference recently and someone stood up and asked me a question. They were just like, how does this apply to the kid starving in Africa, right? Like they said that to me. And my response to them actually was like, well, if I was speaking to kids who are starving in Africa, I wouldn't be saying what I'm saying to you. I was like, this is to you. This is audience specific.
Yes.
Right? My advice that I was giving, I was like, I know who's in my audience. If I was speaking to kids starving in Africa, I'd be giving them something else.
That was appropriate
And relevant and accessible to them at that point. So, but for us, for everyone who's listening and watching right now, tell us if someone's doubting you, if someone, and I know you know this, but someone's doubting you, someone's looking at you going, Marie, that's
easy for you to say.
Easy for you to say, or that's a nice thought.
Yes.
But my position right now, like the situation I'm in, it's so bad, like you have no idea.
That's right. Okay, so I want to dive into this and peel it back in a couple of layers, because it's so important. So number one, I am very clear that I have won what Warren Buffett has coined this phrase as the ovarian lottery, right? I'm a white woman in the United States. By no effort of my own, I was born into a family that gave me an education, put a roof over my head. I had running water. I had electricity, all of those things. There are millions, if not up to 1 billion people that don't have those same privileges or access to some of those resources. So I absolutely get that. That's why it was imperative for me throughout the book to weave in stories far diverse from my own. So folks from the developing world, folks throughout history that don't look like me, that did not grow up where I grew up with the same types of resources and privileges and advantages. And they embody this spirit, this notion that all of us have this innate power and wisdom within ourselves. And when that awakens, what we are capable of as humans is extraordinary. So we have that all over the book. We also have dozens and dozens and dozens of reader stories, right? So folks that haven't won Nobel Peace Prizes or that haven't done these extraordinary things. I've been talking about this idea for 2 decades. Here's a story.
Yeah, I was going to ask you to tell me a couple because
absolutely. And then I want to go to the rules because an 8-year-old actually challenged me when I was first writing this book and it came up with something brilliant. So let me tell the story of Jen. A lot of folks are like, well, yeah, everything is figure outable if you want to build a business or get your health back online or perhaps save a relationship. But what if I'm facing something difficult and hard that isn't? So a woman named Jen wrote to us. And I had first shared this idea with the world in a really public way on Oprah's stage. So she was doing a Super Soul one-day event. She had asked me to speak at it. And the title of my talk was Everything is Figure Outable. So Oprah then put that talk online. It's on her podcast. And so folks heard it that I had never met before. So a woman named Jen wrote to us and said, "Hey, Marie, thank you so much for your talk. This lesson that everything is figure outable is something my mom, who I love so much, had been trying to teach me forever, but I kind of really heard it from you. And then I shared the talk with my mom and she loved it too. But then everything changed. My mom, who is the most important person in my life, was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And suddenly nothing seemed figure outable." And she said, "But then I actually took a walk and I looked at it from a different perspective and realized it was. For example, I could find my mom nursing care that could go and attend to her, even though she lived in this rural area. Number 2, I could figure out how to get my mom foods that she could actually tolerate. Number 3, I got medical equipment so that my mom could spend her last days, and in fact, her last 5 weeks on this planet, where she wanted to be, which is in her home." And she said, "I can tell you without reservation that yes, everything is figure outable. And thank you so much for sharing this idea because it made a difference to 2 women on the other side of the world." And so we have other stories of folks who have used this idea facing addiction, facing loss, death, grief, diagnosis that are life-changing in terms of how long they will be on this planet and how they will exist on this planet. So those are all embedded in there. So I just want to share that. Another frame, I invite people to try it before you deny it. Like I do not claim to have all the answers, nor do I think this book has all the answers, but within it, you will find a set of tools and practices and frameworks to find or create your own.
Yes.
And finally, I'll share the story about the 8-year-old. So I was telling a friend when I was first writing this book, we were like all having a brunch on a Sunday. And my friend's son asked me, "Well, what's your book about?" And I said, "Everything is figure outable." And he's like, "No, it's not." And I was like, "Awesome. Tell me more." And he said, "Well, I can't grow working human wings out of my back." And I was like, "That's very true. You can't do that yet." I said, "But we humans can indeed fly." And he was like, "Oh yeah, that's right." He's like, "Well, I can't get my dog who died when I was 2. We can't get him to, be back alive." And that's like some Pet Cemetery shit right there. But I said, "You know what? That's true." I said, "But scientists are working on cryogenics and there's people who have clone dogs." And he was like, "Oh yeah, that's right." I said, "Look, just because something scientifically hasn't been done yet doesn't mean it's impossible." There's an amazing book called The Beginning of Infinity by a quantum theorist named David Deutsch. And he has this incredible quote, which says, "Everything that is not forbidden by the laws of nature is achievable given the right knowledge." So I would invite everyone listening, you don't have to take a quantum theorist's word for it or my word. Just experiment with this, live this idea, and see if it doesn't help you become more capable and courageous and resilient and persistent in the face of whatever problem you're looking to unpack or whatever dream you're working to achieve.
Yeah, I love that. And try it before you deny it, for sure. Like with everything, right? Like even if I told you when you came in, they're like, oh, we have this juice and it's the best juice in the world.
Yes.
And you could just deny it and be like, no, I have the best juice in the world at home. And it's something as basic as that. Like we can't even do it to do with food and juice, what to speak of wisdom and knowledge and ideas. So yeah, anyone who's listening or watching, I highly recommend that you try this out the way Marie's saying it. And what Marie's done and what she's so beautifully articulating is she's done the research to prove to us that this works.
Yes.
And she's giving you the process to practice it.
That's right.
Right? That's what the book's doing. It's proving to you all through these stories and it's giving you the practice. Go on.
And I'm definitely not sitting here going like, I have everything figured out and I'm just, you know what I mean? Hanging out going like, it's all done. No, I use this every single day. I use this when like I run a company and there's 30 people and, things crash, someone quits, someone gets sick. I am using this actively every single day of my life. And it's what helps me continue to engage with a sense of curiosity and courage and a fearlessness to walk into the inherent groundlessness of reality. Like, let's just be real about this. There's so much in our lives that we cannot control, right? And for someone who will raise her hand to being like, I like to be in control. I like to have those plans. I like to know what's coming up. The nature of reality is chaos.
Yes.
And the nature of reality is groundlessness, which could evoke a lot of fear or it could evoke a lot of curiosity. And so what I also like about this notion, if everything is figure outable, you don't have to grasp onto anything but your own innate wisdom and capability to show up and dynamically be appropriate to what occurs in this moment.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things I really wanted to ask you, because this is something I'm fascinated by, is when someone's living through that process of the belief that my life and everything that happens to me is the worst.
Yeah.
Right. And I hear that a lot. You see it a lot on social media. You see it a lot on people's profiles where people are just like, I'm going through the worst day. My life's, and we have this belief that we're victims and we have this belief so strongly that I'm going through the worst. How do you start rewiring that from your perspective? Like, how do you start the process of getting out of that?
Yeah, it's interesting. And I think all of us have to, we need to give ourselves permission to have those bad days because we all have them. People often ask me, they're like, you seem so confident all the time and you seem like you have everything together. And I'm like, well, you don't see me when I'm struggling. Like, I'm like on the phone with a friend going like, I don't know if this is any good, or I don't know if X, Y, and Z is working, or, kind of those things that we just do in private, quite frankly. So I think knowing that all of us have bad days and you can be like, oh, this is the worst. But to answer your question, I think it's understanding that we have the power to assign any situation either an empowering meaning or a disempowering meaning. So let's take a really simple example, right? So we're not going to get too heavy. We're going to do it just right on the surface because sometimes that's easier to see, like the juice example.
Totally.
So let's say I am a first-time writer and I've sent out my manuscript and I got rejected again. I can take that very neutral fact and assign a meaning or a story to it that says, well, I'm a failure. No one likes my shit. And I should just give up and I should stop being a writer clearly because here's another rejection letter. So that is what I would categorize as a disempowering meaning. You're not going to feel good. You're probably not going to take a productive, effective action from that state of mind. And you may not ever reach your ultimate dream of being perhaps a published writer. You could choose to assign that same neutral fact an empowering meaning, which could be, and we can come up with tons of them. Maybe it's like, you know what? Every rejection means I'm one step closer to success because I'm actually getting my work out there. And if I'm getting my work out there, that means that I could possibly be published. You could assign an empowering meaning like this. That particular article or story wasn't right for that publisher. They're not rejecting me, they're rejecting the work. Let me go find another publisher that might be aligned with this particular story. You could also make it mean something like this. You could say, you know what? I remember that J.K. Rowling got rejected 12 times, and I think Stephen King's Carrie got rejected like 30 times. I just need to keep going and build up even more rejections. And this isn't about being Pollyanna. It's understanding the power that we have of perception and our ability to assign a meaning to any fact that presents itself to us. And I think there's something interesting. There's this great quote: life is 10% what happens to me and 90% how I react to it. Chuck Swindoll, right? Pastor. I love that because there are going to be hard truths in all of our lives. And I feel like the only thing that we can control is how we contextualize what happens and therefore how we respond to what happens. Does that answer that question?
That definitely answers that question. I love the multiple ways in which you gave of rewiring that same thought with different meaning and stories.
Well,
I think it
forces us to be creative, right?
Totally.
So it's like we have to challenge ourselves to see the same exact thing from multiple points of view. One of the things, we'll talk about this a little later, but I often love showing people optical illusions where you can see multiple things in the same exact lines or drawings because it proves that we can all look at the same facts and have a completely different interpretation, which therefore proves that the situation is not what is bad or good, but the labels and the context and the stories that we lay on top of it.
Totally. I couldn't agree more. I think that's a great answer because what you've triggered for me is that we're used to when we don't find a creative understanding of what's just happened, and we don't think more objectively about why this has happened, what's the reason behind it. We're basically good at making broad generalizations based on very specific situations.
Yes.
Right? We make this broad generalization based off a very specific situation. Like when you said, it could have been because you applied to the wrong job with the wrong type of work, with the wrong experience.
Right.
Which is a very specific situation.
Yes.
And you make this broad generalization like, I'm not meant to make it.
That's right. Like I'm done. I mean, you can look at the same kind of thing. Let's say two people lose their job, which is absolutely not a good thing for most of us, right? We want to have a living. We need to have the income. We have the responsibility to our families. One person says, that's it. I'm washed up. I'm never going to work again. I'm irrelevant. And just starts being and feeling down about themselves, sitting on the couch, sleeping in late, not doing anything productive to change the situation. Same person loses the job, says, you know what? This is awful. And this really hurts. And maybe this is the opportunity that I've been looking for to start my own business. Or maybe this is an opportunity to find a job that's going to value me more and that I'm actually going to like. Different context create different actions, create different outcomes.
100%. I love that. Great answer. There's a part in this book that I really loved, and it's you talking about the difference between fear and intuition.
Yes.
And how we tell the difference.
Oh, I can't wait to talk about this.
And I love that section because I think that's something that people struggle with so much.
Yes.
Like being able, so it's so funny. We talk about when we label things wrong, and one of the biggest things we label wrong is the voices in our head. Like getting to be able to be aware of, wait, who's saying that in my head and where's that coming from? Talk me through that because I love that part.
So fear versus intuition. So many of the times what stops us all from figuring something out is we're afraid, right? We're afraid maybe we won't be able to do it, or we're just afraid of the area that we need to walk into in order to figure it out. And then people often have asked me, well, how do I know the difference between healthy fear that would be very good for me to move through versus my intuition or a gut instinct or a hunch going, no, that's actually going to be a shit show, right? Like, or that's just going to be, it's something you should not do. And that's a really important question. Here's what's awesome. You don't need to go asking other people for the answer. You have all of the wisdom you need inside of you. And just to step back and to create a context for why what I'm about to share is so important for all of us to practice, and I still practice it to this day. We live in such a sedentary culture, right? Where we're spending 8, 10, sometimes 12 hours a day sitting, staring at our screens. So we're living from the neck up. And many of us have lost touch with the wisdom and the intelligence that exists in our physical bodies because simply we're not moving enough. And as someone who's been a Nike athlete, fitness is a big part of my life, movement is a huge part of my life. I see very clearly when I am moving consistently, I have access. It's like a channel opens up where there is so much intelligence and so much insight that has not to do with my logical, reasonable brain. It has to do with another plane. Yeah. And when I don't, I get up here and it all gets twisted and then I'm unclear. So if you are facing an opportunity, a possibility to say yes to a job, a speaking engagement, a date, who knows, it could be any realm of life, and you're not sure whether you should move ahead with it, here's what you need to do. Get to a place where you're quiet, nothing's around. Make sure that there's no technology. And I would invite people to close their eyes while they do this. So ask yourself, does the idea of moving ahead with this, of saying yes to this, make me feel expansive or contracted? In the nanosecond after you ask yourself that question, your body will have a physical response. So let's walk through what expansive.
Everyone who's listening and watching right now, do this with us.
Yes.
Yeah.
So expansive, and I'll just give some possibilities, but yours might show up differently. So expansive may actually be as though your shoulders are relaxing and your chest is opening up. Expansive may feel like even your physical body is moving ahead in space. Expansive may feel like a twinge or a tingle of excitement or joy or anticipation, even if the notion of this feels intimidating to you or like something you've never done before. There is a lightness, a moving forward, a ever so subtle visceral yes, whether it shows up in word form or merely through the movement of your body. That's expansive. Now, let's look at the flip side. If you ask yourself this question, does the idea of saying yes to this make me feel expansive or contracted? And in the nanosecond after you ask that question, you find a pit in your stomach or a sense of dread or your shoulders kind of hunching forward or even your body just shaking back in space or your head saying no. That's your intuition trying to save your butt and tell you, don't move ahead with this. And here's why this is so important, Jay. Because often when we're faced with an opportunity that our ego thinks we should move ahead with, right? Either there's a significant amount of money on the line or some type of opportunity that we feel will give us an edge, something beyond the competition, or put us on a level that we're playing in a field that we're like, yeah, now we've really made it. And it looks good on paper, but something inside is like not right. That's when we need to listen to this most and use this test, because I don't know if you've experienced this. When you override those little feelings of dread, even though everything looks so cool on paper, that's when we get ourselves into trouble and get off track.
That's completely, I've experienced that in the same way.
Right?
I can completely, everything you just said, I was just like, and it's often the way I describe it is I say to people like, stop trying to, because people always ask me, do I listen to my head or my heart? And I'm like, listen to your gut, like listen to the physical,
yes,
like the physical indicator.
There are neurons in there, which
exactly.
you know that have so much intelligence. And I think that all of us have access to this innate wisdom, this inner knowing, if we have the courage to be still and to listen to it. And again, that takes some practice in a culture that is constantly like this and this. And that's always like, well, what do you think I should do? Or, you know, what's the money or what's the opportunity or what am I going to get from this? Rather than trusting that you have this innate tool inside that is designed to guide you to your highest and best everything.
Absolutely. That's such a beautiful answer. And thank you for guiding us through that too. Like everyone who's listening and watching, make sure you do that again and again and again.
Expansive or contracted, you can do it anytime.
And you can just, you know it straight away. That's the most beautiful thing about it, that no one has to tell you. You'll know it and you'll feel it. And then you'll be able to see patterns in that feeling, right? You'll be able to be like, I felt that when I dated that guy that I wasn't sure about. And then I felt it again when I hired that person that wasn't meant to be in my company. And that, right? Like,
oh my goodness, you laid up perfectly. Some people often say, well, I don't know how to hear my intuition. I'm like, oh, but you do. If we go excavating through your past just a little bit and we start surfacing up times when you said yes to something, but you kind of felt a little off about it. And then afterwards you're like, what did I say yes to that for? Look at all of those times. That was your intuition trying to save your butt.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that. No, and I love that. And thank you for sharing that. And thank you for making it so practical and physical and real, because I think we get, like you said, we just get lost up in here.
And I would say in addition to that too, if they do that exercise and they're not quite clear on, expansive or contracted, do something physical that has an intensity to it. So I often go to a spin class because it's dark and I can really sweat and I can challenge myself in a safe environment, or dance or run or walk around the block. I find that when I engage my physical body, the interior channels open up that tap me into a higher source of intelligence that otherwise I can't access.
I think learning to trust and hear your intuition quicker and earlier in your life and being able to spot the patterns of good and bad.
Yes.
And I started to do that very early on. I started to notice that my intuition was always guiding me right when I was going against the grain, doing things that no one else thought were a good idea, And I was fully sold and confident about it. So I remember I took a gap year before I went to university, and that was all my friends went straight to university and was like, what are you doing wasting time? And this is going to be, and it was one of the best years of my life. And then I chose to become a monk when all my friends went and worked at big companies. And again, it was against the grain, and it was, and these were patterns I started to notice in my life. So now when I come to make a decision and I'm going against the grain, no one agrees with me, and I'm really confident about it, I'm like, oh yeah, that's my intuition. Like, that's okay.
Exactly.
Instead of second guessing every time and going, oh, well, shouldn't everyone agree with me if this is a good idea? And I've noticed that even now, and I make that mistake now, there are times with certain things where I think I have less knowledge, external knowledge.
Yes.
And I'll go against my intuition because I'll have less external knowledge.
Absolutely. Because you assume, and I went through this even with the process of writing the book. You're like, oh, well, so-and-so knows better because this is their business. And it's almost like you give yourself a back seat and you abdicate responsibility.
Yes.
I've done that where you assume. I've done that so many times where I've wasted money, like really good money and really good time and, creative resources, same thing, thinking that someone else knows better because I'm less experienced. I love that you brought that up. Yeah. And of course, we're all open to feedback. And of course, we're all open to learning. But I think when you have those inner little red signals and flags going off, you trust yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Trust yourself. And otherwise, if you made the mistake, make sure you note that down.
Yes.
Like, write that down somewhere. Like, I remember even something as basic as if I do well in my exams at school, I would never write down why I did well. And then the next year I'd be wondering, well, how did I revise last year that made me do well?
Yes.
Right? And if you've done badly and you wrote down why you did badly, the next year when it comes around to doing something again, you can avoid that same thing. Absolutely. So I just think it's so important. I'm so glad that you wrote about that in the book. And for anyone who loves this theme that me and Maria both fall in love with talking about, it's better in the book. As in, like, there's so much more in the book. There's so much more in the book.
Yeah, I mean, we have so many exercises and things for people to do to dive even deeper.
Yeah, which I'm really excited for people to check out. One of the things that I love that you have a chapter on this book is that it's called Start Before You're Ready.
Yes.
And when I read that, and I was just like, yes, this is exactly the advice. Like, this is what people need to hear.
Yes.
Because I think because of school and because of our education system and because of even when we used to go to school, we'd be like, are you ready to go to school? It was always about being ready, right? It was like, do you have your uniform on? Have you packed your bag? Have you got your pencil case? Like first day of school syndrome. And it's like, are you ready to go to school? And it's almost like we're always in this mode of like, I'm not ready yet.
Yes.
Right? Whether it's educationally, whether it's emotionally, whether it's mentally. And that kind of becomes one of our biggest excuses to ourselves of I'm not ready. And I was reflecting on where did this come from when I was reading the book? And for me, I think it came from the education system of always being ready before an exam, being ready before a test. So tell me a bit about how you came to this place in your life.
Yes.
And how you saw other people and their stories of starting before they were ready actually be the tool.
Absolutely. In my own life, when I was first training in terms of wanting to be a coach and becoming a coach, it was so much in terms of personal development work. And it was awesome. I loved working with clients. I was like 23, 24 years old. And not only was I helping folks try and get results in their own life, I was also doing this work on myself. And one of the things I realized was that defining myself as a coach, first of all, that never really quite felt right to me. It felt very limiting and narrow and not quite on. But I admitted that I had this dream to dance. Now, let's set some background. No dance training whatsoever. Never taken a formal dance class in my life. And it was like I was around 24, 25, which sadly in the professional dance world, it's a little over the hill to start, right? That's a very, very late start. And anyway, I finally got real with myself that I wanted to do this. And so I started taking professional dance classes in New York City. And it was amazing. I found myself coming alive. And this was great. And so I was taking class at Crunch Fitness. And my teachers were like, you're actually really good. And I remember, Jay, I was literally like, are you talking about me? I was like, what? Like, I don't have any technique. They're like, no, you should really consider start teaching. And I was yeah.
Wow.
Which given the fact that previous to that, I had, failed on Wall Street, I had failed in the magazine industry, I had all these failures, and I was keeping myself alive, quite frankly, because I wasn't earning a lot of money as a coach by bartending and waiting tables. So the fact that someone thought I was good at something was that just little grain of like, oh, you are kind of good at something. It was great. Cut to. I said, all right, I'm going to try out and become a substitute teacher at Crunch. I'm going to teach these hip hop classes. I had no idea what the hell I was doing.
Cool. You're so cool.
So it was just sheer passion, right? And I was just doing everything I could, just trying to make it through. One of my first classes ever that I taught on my own, someone came up to me after class and she said, "You're really good." And I was like, "Thank you. That means the world to me." She's like, "I work for MTV and we're working on a new show and we are looking for a choreographer / producer. You should come in." And Jay, it was a moment, like this was my first real class ever. Again, so like nervous and awkward and unsure of myself. So what came through my head? You're not ready yet. That it was like, I was even praying. I was like, universe, why did this have to happen? I am certainly not ready. I'm not good. I don't know what the hell is going on, but this is an amazing opportunity because I grew up on MTV.
Yeah,
so I couldn't say no, right? Because again, I could hear my inner clock going like, girl, you're not getting any younger, so you might as well say yes. So I said yes to this opportunity. And I remember standing outside of the Viacom building in New York City the day before I was like, when I was about to go up for this interview that afternoon. And Jay, I wanted to throw up. Like I was so nauseous. I was so not ready. Like I was actually thinking, should I throw up in this like metal trash can or should I like go inside and go to the bathroom so that I can clean myself up before I actually went to the interview? So I went into the building and I stood in front of the boss's door, the person who I was going to interview with. And I like shook myself out and I just said, "You are not ready, but you're going to start before you're ready because this is an incredible opportunity. And no matter what happens, you're going to feel good about yourself that you just went for it." Yeah. And I went in for that interview and I booked the job.
Wow.
And so it was this experience of me putting myself into kind of this whole world that I was in over my head. So let's be clear. I was working with dancers that had decades more experience than I did. They were talking about dance terms that not only could I not perform, I didn't even know what the hell they were, but I made my way through by showing up as professionally as I could, by being honest about my inexperience, but also by bringing my gifts that I did have to the table. And that one opportunity, dancing and choreographing and producing for MTV, that led to fitness videos. That led to this increased learning curve where I got to learn basically 3 to 4 years worth of experience in like 3 months, which eventually led to me choreographing commercials for Reebok and then eventually becoming one of the world's first Nike elite dance athletes, all because I was willing to start before I was ready. And every single area of my life, I still do it in business to this day. There's so many things I say yes to that I'm like, somewhere in the back of my mind is like, "You're not ready yet." And I'm like, that means I got to go. That means I got to strap myself in and go like, we're doing this. I will learn as I go. Yeah. So this idea of starting before we're ready, it doesn't mean that we're irresponsible. Doesn't mean that we don't do our research. And it doesn't mean that we override our intuition, that if perhaps, there was years ago, and I'll say this, that people approached me to write a book and I legitimately wasn't ready yet, but it was because my focus was in other areas. I had other priorities. I knew from a deeper level, it wasn't about the fear. It was about trusting my own timing. Yes. But when you know you want to do something and you're clear that this is your path, using the mantra, "Start before you're ready," is an amazing way to beat procrastination, to leapfrog over your fear, and to get going.
Yeah. And to push out of that desire of perfection and planning and what we were speaking about earlier of like just having this addiction, like perfection addiction of like, everything's going to be perfect before I start. Everything's going to be in right in place. And I can so agree with you. I remember getting my first book offer to me after my first ever video and one of my first viral videos. And I was approached by an amazing publisher that I would have dreamt of being published by before. And they were like, "We'd love you to do a book." And when I sat there and it wasn't that, again, same as what you're saying, I just knew at that time that my focus had to be something else. Yes. It wasn't, and it was that I didn't really know what I'd want to write a book about in full. Like that's how unready I was. Like it wasn't like, I had no idea. Yes. And I was like, but I want to focus on this. I want to build this and then I will come to that. Rather than like, actually, I'm not going to do anything right now because I'm not ready yet.
That's right. And I think that discernment and digging into this nuance is so important for people to hear because, starting before you're ready doesn't mean that you're going to throw your life into chaos. Totally. But I think for anyone listening who feels stuck, and we all have felt that, right? Where you're just like, like I really want to do it. Start before you're ready will kickstart you into action.
Yes.
And action really is the antidote to fear.
100%, 100%. And you have this graph in your book as well, this little squiggle.
Oh,
And
progress versus perfection?
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
And it's true. Like when you start before you're ready,
Yes.
you are going to have a lot more of this and a
Yes.
lot more of this.
Yes.
But if you don't start, you're not going to have anything, right?
That's
like
right.
you're just there, like you're this dot.
I think people have this mistaken notion that if you're making real progress, legitimate progress towards a particular goal, people see it as a line that goes straight up on a graph. So like you start at the bottom, started from the bottom, and now we're here, right? But it's like all neat and tied together. And my experience and what I've seen just working with so many people is progress actually goes up, and then it reverses, and then it goes down, and then it goes in some circles, and then it reverses, and then it goes up, and then it goes down again. So progress is this squiggly line. And so many of us feel that if we fall on our faces, which I've done so many times, we feel that if we hit a wall, which I've done so many times, that we're not making progress, but that's untrue. Can I tell a quick story?
Yeah, please. I'd love to hear one.
So, one of our B Schoolers. So B School is a program that I've been doing for a decade. It's online business school for modern entrepreneurs. We've had over 55,000 people go through the program.
That's insane.
So it's about,
Congratulations.
thank you.
It's amazing.
Thank you for that. I want to tell a story about one of our B Schoolers because she so perfectly illustrates what we're talking about. So a woman named Molly, she had seen a video I did with another grad where this grad was going like, I had my first $30,000 a month. And so Molly saw that. She was like, wait, what? Like I had never even knew that was possible. So it opened up a possibility for her that she had never recognized before. I think that's why it's so important for us to witness each other and what's possible, because sometimes you can't see what you don't, you can't become what you don't see. So Molly said, I would love to have my own business. She didn't have an idea for business. She had no business experience. It was just this little seed of a dream, like many of us have around a relationship or our health or a creative project. We don't know how we're going to do it. We have no experience doing it, but we want that thing, like dance for me. So Molly did the program, fine. She worked for 2 years, Jay, and she kept failing. Business wasn't working. She showed up in the program. She's trying everything, not working. And she wrote to us and she was so disappointed in herself. And we said, hey, don't be like, you're actually making progress. Hang out. Like we gave her some coaching. We advised her to go into our member area and talk with the community. She actually took the feedback from everyone. She retooled, and then we didn't hear from her from a little while. Cut to year 3. We had an email from Molly. You are not going to believe this. And we're just like, okay, what's happening, girl? In 1 month, she had more than doubled that. She's like, I just brought in $66,000. She actually had a real working business. She had completely surpassed what her original inspiration was. That was so far beyond anything that she could have comprehended at that point. But it didn't happen until well into year 3. And the reason I want to tell this story is this. So many of us have this mistaken idea that in that year or that 2 years that we're not actually making progress, but we are.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
And if she hadn't kept going, she would have never realized that little seed of a dream that was originally there, that was real, but she had to go through the squiggles like we all do before we keep getting to that next level. So I just want to tell that progress, not perfection. If you are making progress in any regard, if you are learning something, even if it's a tough lesson, if you are moving forward, if you are making adjustments and evolving or iterating, guess what? You're making progress.
Yeah.
Keep going.
Absolutely. This was one of the things when we were monks, the way we were trained to rewire our brain this way was planting seeds. And so when you actually plant a seedling and then you water it every day and you make sure it gets sun, you realize that thing doesn't grow for days.
It's under the surface.
It's under the surface because the roots having a spread.
Yes.
Trying to grow underneath in the foundation. And you're going, God, when is this thing going to grow? And then you finally see it grow.
Yes.
And then it looks like this little weak thing. And you're like, oh God, like that's never going to grow into anything significant. And then it grows and grows and grows. And finally it grows. And then you see flowers and then you see fruits. And it's almost like that fruit. You were never going to get that fruit if you gave up watering it on day 2.
Or you picked out that little seedling on week 3 because you're like, man, it's not working. It's not going fast.
You just neglect it.
Yes.
Yeah, you just ignore it.
Yes.
And it's just like you have to rewire your brain for that patience and persistence, and what you're saying, progress, not perfection.
That's right.
Because you're not going to get that fruit, that flower, that paycheck, that $66,000,
whatever,
reward, whatever it is.
Yes.
If you're impatient and forcing it, you can't force it to grow. I could even overwater it for one day, and that would actually destroy its growth.
You'll kill it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's where I always wonder, when and how do we figure out if we've pushed too much, spent too much money, and now it's like, maybe this isn't for you, or is the goal wrong, or is the process wrong, or tell me about that other extreme.
I love this. So this is kind of getting into the nitty gritty. So I would say the conversation that we had a little bit ago about intuition is really important here, because it's going to be different. And I think it's also important to make the distinction that giving up isn't the same thing as moving on. There is something known as the power of positive quitting. So another quick story. So I remember earlier on in my career, before I had a team and had resources, and again, I've been doing this for 20 years. So we're talking like back in the early days when I was still doing all my own customer service, it was basically me and like a virtual assistant. That was it. I had this idea to build a custom membership site. And this is way back in the day when that's like unheard of. Yeah. And I think the thing cost me like $5,000, which was like $5,000 that I did not have at that time. So that was an enormous, first of all, that's still a lot of money. Totally. And it was an enormous, scary investment for me at that time. It was a new coaching program. And was so excited that a bunch of people said yes to this coaching program, and they were starting to log in, and Jay, the thing melted down. It crashed. It was such a hot mess. And I was just, not only was I mortified, but customer experience and customer service and taking care of people is everything to me. Like, that's my heart and soul. And I just remember going like, this is not going to work. This is it. Like, I'm going to quit, not as a coach, but I'm going to get people off of this really shitty platform. I'm going to put them on a hosted platform. I'm going to over deliver and take care of them, but I'm not going to keep pouring money into this or beating myself up because, this thing crashed and burned. I'm going to take the lessons from it, and I'm going to pivot and move on. So I think when it comes to understanding whether or not you're kind of done with something and you're ready to move on, I think people have to get honest with themselves about their motivation. So one of the things that I've seen, especially as it relates to career and especially business, when folks start a business purely to make money, that's when it never works. So I always like to invite people, never start a business to make money, start a business to make a difference. Yeah. And all of us as entrepreneurs and creatives and multi-passionate creatives, we need to stay nimble and evolve, because the market's evolving, technology's evolving, we're evolving as humans, and as is the market. But if you're trying to push something that in your heart of heart, you're not truly committed to, and you're just trying to get some external reward like fame, recognition, the dollar bills, whatever it could be, it's not going to work.
Definitely. I'm so glad that you spoke about that, because I couldn't agree more. I always say to people, like, if you're pushing to make something happen and you're doing it to make a difference or an impact or a service, that actually keeps driving you.
Yes.
And if you've lost that drive for something, it's probably because that's not the reason why you were doing it, right? Because otherwise you wouldn't lose the drive for it if it was that meaningful to you. And so I've always said to people, I probably have, and I'll give a genuine, honest number. I won't give an amplified number. I probably have ideas for 3 other things I could be doing that I think could be huge financially. Yeah. Like, I'm convinced that I have 3 ideas that have been verified by venture capitalists and all the rest of it that I know would be financially very successful. But I couldn't die for any of them. Like, I don't really care if I did them. Yes. Like, someone else could take them and make money from them and be okay. Like, yes. But what I'm doing right now, what we're doing right now, that's something I'm willing to die for. Like, that's something that I'm committed to. It's something that I've worked very hard to do and have been driven by that service or that impact or that difference. Completely.
And I think that for all of us, if someone's thinking about, oh God, have I hit the ceiling on it? That's the really good litmus test between you and you. Again, I had side jobs for 7 years as I was starting this business. I mean, everything from bartending, waiting tables, cleaning people's toilets. I taught a lot. I did anything I possibly could, because the coaching and the creating and the writing and the connecting with others, like, that was my dream. And no matter how long it was going to take, I didn't even know if it would eventually work. That's the truth of it. I had no idea, but I was fine eating my mac and cheese and my peanut butter and jelly, because I was really doing the thing that I felt like I was meant to do in the world.
Yeah. I love that. I'm so glad you did that.
Me
I'm
too.
so glad you pushed through. And I'm so glad. And this is why I say to everyone, it's like, when I'm hearing you say all of that, I'm just like, I'm so glad, because it just makes the story better, right? Like all those situations. And what I mean by that is not from a marketing point of view, not from a sales point of view, but that's what we can all connect with.
Yes.
The multiple jobs at the same time, like the multiple rejections, the ups and the downs. That's what everyone's story is. But for some reason, we look at all these posters and we think, oh yeah, but they didn't have that. And that's just because we don't do enough research. I feel like we don't actually dive so deeply into the people we admire and really look at their backstories and really look at their failures and rejections, because otherwise then we'd see that we're on the same path.
The same exact path. And I think one of the things you've probably noticed this too, because you've had such incredibly rich conversations with just so many incredible people, is every person on the planet has their own struggles, even right now, no matter what you're saying. Like, people are battling things privately, and that's their right to. Not everyone has to share everything, but no matter how much perceived power or fame or money someone has, it's like they're having hard times too. And they have the self-doubt and they have the fear and they have their own versions of struggles. And I think when we realize that, we stop putting people on pedestals and start recognizing that we have so much more in common than we do in terms of our differences.
Absolutely. Thank you, Marie. So I end every interview with final 5 questions. These
bring
are
it on.
a final 5 rapid fire round, quick fire round. Yes. So you have to answer with either one word or one sentence maximum.
Ooh, okay, I'm up for the challenge.
And I'll go off tangent if you say something and I'm like, oh, it's usually me who ruins it for the guest. But Here we go. So the first thing you say to yourself when you wake up in the morning.
Good morning.
In that voice?
Kind of, like in my own head. I don't say it out loud, but I'm like, all right, good morning, girl.
I love that. The last thing you say to yourself before you go to bed.
So tired.
I like it. Thank you for the honesty.
Yeah.
Third question, the best advice you've ever received.
That your heart is the strongest part of you.
Nice. Fourth question, the worst advice you've ever received.
The sentence I'm going to say, I feel like my brain must have deleted it because I literally have nothing right now.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, that's
like
good.
It must have deleted it because I'm like,
oh, I can't think of it.
Yes.
Yeah, I like it. That's awesome. And the fifth and final question is, what are 3 truths that you live by? So one is obviously everything is figure outable.
Everything is figure outable. The next truth is there is nothing more important in this world for any of us than the quality of our relationships and our connections. And I think that the third thing, clarity comes from engagement, not thought.
Explain that. I want to hear more of that.
So many times for many of us, we have these notions of what could be possible or what we might want to do or what something could feel like, but we spend so much time in our minds rather than actively engaging to discover it. So rather than pro-con lists or rather than, sitting on the couch kind of going, oh, I don't know if I should, I think living by this idea that clarity comes from engagement, not thought, gets us out into the world, gets us physically engaged, and activates this open channel within to feel our way into our truth rather than think our way into what we, have a notion, is this going to make me happy or not? And I feel like when we lead from this, when we lead from our heart and we tell our truth from engagement, it's where the magic is.
That's great advice. I love that. Thank you so much. Marie was telling me, and this is interesting to me because I'm working on my book right now. Right. Marie was telling me that there was a ton of stuff that actually didn't make it into her book. Now, whenever I hear stuff like that, I'm like, well, that's the stuff I really want to know about. Because if an author creates something and it doesn't get in there, not because it's not good enough, but because it's context, space, whatever it is. Tell us about why.
Yeah. So it was this amazing chapter that I had worked for weeks on, and my publisher, who I really trust, and my editor, they're like, oh, well, we felt the natural ending was here. And And I was like, at first I was crestfallen. It felt like a punch in the gut. And then when I re-looked at the material, I was like, oh no, I think I could actually teach this better if I had the benefit of my voice and I had videos and I actually had worksheets and could actually coach people through it. So it was this acronym, this little formula I created to help people embed the belief everything is figure outable into their consciousness, into their mind, into their soul in a really organic way. So I said to myself, okay, I actually still want to give this to folks, but I want to do it for free and just teach everyone. There's no upsells. There's no anything. It's just another part of the book that just didn't make it into the pages that I actually feel will be more effective if done collectively and done online. So there's behavioral science, there's neuroscience that backs all of this up. And so it's free. It's happening October 14th. If you just go to everythingisfigureoutable.com, you'll see a little link. And if you're interested, you can totally take the course completely on me and with, tens of thousands of other people. And you'll learn this 5-step formula that will help you figure everything out and embed the belief into your mind and soul.
I love that. That's so awesome. I'm so glad you're doing that, especially with the point of embedding it into your psychology.
Well, because my friend asked me, she's like, well, this is great because you learned this belief as a child, which we talk about in the book. And it's been my own internal operating system for so long. And she's like, yeah, but how can you help it be mine? And I was like, oh, I got you. Yeah. And so that's what we did. We created a little system for people. And I talk about it like it's an emergency first aid kit or like a life preserver. If you ever forget that everything is figure outable or you find yourself feeling stuck or overwhelmed or just unsure how to move ahead, you'll have this wonderful little tool that you can use for life. And it's free and it's all yours.
Amazing. And when and where do they sign up?
So go to everythingisfigureoutable.com and there'll be a link about the course. And again, it's 100% free. You can invite your friends. Just come do it.
Everyone who's been listening and watching, let's give a huge round of applause in our hearts for Marie. That was amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me on.
The book, Everything Out is Figure Outable, is out on September 10th. If you're listening to this right now, I'm guessing the book is already out or about to be out. Make sure you go and pre-order if you are hearing this before. And if it's already out, make sure you go and buy the book to dive deeper into this conversation. If you want to overcome your fears, if you want to understand how to get started before you're ready, if you want to know how to make progress even without feeling that you're perfect, which none of us are, and if you actually want to start driving towards your dream, this is the book for you. Make sure you go out and get it. Don't hesitate to buy this book. This conversation should have given you the insights into the kind of things that are inside. There's so many more incredible stories that I've read inside the book that I can't wait for you to hear, because the more you fill your life up with those stories, the more you'll be able to believe that everything is figure outable. So thank you so much again, Marie.
Thank you, Jay.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you for who you are in the world. You're so amazing. I adore you. Thank you.
Thank you. Sweetest. Thank you for watching and listening, everyone. Make sure you share this episode. What I'd love for you to do is find the one thing that Marie said that you're not going to just think about or post on Instagram, but you're going to experiment with. I do want you to post it across Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, wherever you're active, and share what it was that she said that you're testing out this week. Go get the book, and I can't wait to see you again next week. Thanks for listening. If you want even more videos just like this one, click on the boxes over here. And if you want to continue seeing these kinds of stories, you can subscribe by clicking the link right here.